It looked like there was a private VIP party room of some sort underneath where the bar was. I went in and it turned out to be a casino. There were a variety of slot machines, a roulette table, a poker table, and a craps table. There was a secure-looking vault area where a banker could go and another minibar. Very cool, I thought to myself. This was right next to the kitchen and dining room as well, so food could be brought in as needed so people didn't need to go anywhere. So I left the VIP room and went to check out the dining room. It was very luxurious but functional and wouldn't have looked out of place in a well-catered wedding. There were no tablecloths on the tables right now, so it was easy to look under all of the tables. I wasn't relaxing at all and was making sure to check everywhere possible, but still not seem threatening. After checking the dining room, last but not least, I checked out the kitchen. This is the place that was giving me the most anxiety, so I'm glad I had unintentionally saved until last. This was also placed in a strategic position because even though it seems like it's at the complete end of the ship, it really isn't. After clearing the kitchen's every nook and cranny and there being nobody around that could hurt me, I went up against the window again. I imagine these doors opening and closing all day and night as yacht staff brought food from the kitchen directly out to customers, who sat out there in the beautiful summer weather with the Pacific Ocean just feet away. I looked around the kitchen some more and was drawing a blank. I needed to sit down. It had been a long day. I stared outside for a few minutes, trying to listen for any clues, but heard nothing out of the ordinary. I checked my phone's Wi-Fi again and saw nothing. I toggled the Wi-Fi back off and headed back to the second floor's cabin to find a place to rest until morning. I got back to the foyer, and from the first floor I noticed how amazing it really looked. I would like to see it during the daytime. It reminded me of a scaled-down version of a grand hall of a mansion. I allowed myself a minute to hold the banister with one hand. I felt the love that went into the carving. There were no splinters, and the entirety of the railing had been well maintained. I let my hand run the length of the railing up to the second floor and took a turn right into the cabins. I went into the cabins and was trying to think of a room to settle down in for the night. This was around when I noticed there were no floor plans around the ship, like to say where were the emergency exits. I figured someone must have taken them all, like the frames were there, but the inserts were all empty. I was going around the ship more by feeling than anything. Some of the rooms didn't feel right. The captain's quarters upstairs, for example, felt a lot of turmoil. The crew quarters, a lot of anxiety and contempt, but also admiration and courage. The passenger quarters were very passive. I got the distinct feeling that they were unaware as to what was going on. They didn't have cell signal out here, and most common folk don't have radios. They were only aware of the storm and probably didn't know how big it was. The ones that wanted to go back were able to and thus didn't have any anxiety. The ones that didn't care didn't have any anxiety anyway, and were brave and courageous and went around the storm. There was something else, though, sort of a baseline of structure and order that shouldn't be present around such tumult. Like the crew were in control of the disruption somehow. I wonder if the passengers thought the situation wasn't real and were possibly thrill seekers or something. It wasn't normalcy bias, they simply weren't afraid. Like they were here to not be afraid. It was a very strange thing. I couldn't untangle the sense of it, but clearly half the people got off this ship. They were the ones that obviously didn't have their situation together. I can't imagine they appreciated their decision for more than 2 seconds once they reached land, but the people on the ship weren't here any longer either. Both sides tried to make the best decision, but you can only go with what you know and how you feel. Chapter 13. Getting ready for some rest. Late night, day 1. I'm getting the best feeling from this 1950s room for some reason. I have no idea why. So I went into the 1950s room and closed the door behind me and looked around. I threw my backpack on the bed and unclipped my flashlight from my chest rig. I checked under the bed even though I already had earlier, and of course nothing was there. I clipped my flashlight back on and kept looking around. I checked in the closet and it was empty. There was an old 1950s era television that was pretty cool. It was on the floor with some wooden nubs. I take that back. It was a newer TV, but it was styled to look like an old TV. It occurred to me it would be a horrible fire hazard to have an old television on a boat. My first memory of a TV was my father picking up and running it outside as it was on fire. The fire department had to drive to our house and put it out, no joke. They were made of wood and had gases in them that were basically miniature bombs. That would be horrible. There was a schedule next to the TV, and it looked like they had pre-programmed in remastered versions of period-appropriate television shows. There was the funny one with the red-headed girl, and another one was the two-man detective police show that I absolutely loved. I, of course, wasn't old enough to have watched these air on the first runs, but I loved to watch the reruns much later. These shows carved out who I ended up being in a weird way, the old ways. There was the one about the sheepdog that was always finding kids who fell into wells for some reason, and lots of great westerns. Those were my favorite. Man, oh man, I thought to myself, what a great room to spend some time in and just reminisce about reruns. They had an old radio. I imagined people huddling around radio listening to radio stories. They had some radio stories you could listen to also, but I imagine that for most of those you'd have to go into the 1940s room before television really took over. Before I couldn't afford satellite radio anymore, I loved listening to reruns of the old 1930s radio shows. Back when I still had an appropriate job before economy collapses and fiscal cliffs became yearly occurrences. Okay, this is starting to bum me out, I thought to myself. I decided I was done looking at the radio and TV and decided to sit down. I got out a ready meal and looked to see what it was. Beef taco filling. Oh wow, you've got to be kidding me, I thought to myself. How lucky is that? I just happened to have some crackers, so I got out some crackers. Then I took out the ready meal from the box and carefully set some crackers down on the box lid. Then I opened a notch with my knife in the taco filling and started squirting the sauce onto the crackers. It was amazing. I ate 3 crackers that way and then got out another water bottle. I ate all my crackers from that package and all of my taco filling and put it away in my backpack to pack back out. Then I realized I hadn't used the bathroom because I hadn't been drinking a lot of water. I wanted to lock the cabin door, but the lock was a 2-stage and the first stage was electronic. The second stage was a deadbolt, so I locked that instead. I set my AR down next to the bed and went and used the bathroom. I still had my sidearm and backup sidearm with me, so I wasn't worried. Plus, nothing was going to get through that door anytime soon. Anything that could get through that door quickly, there wasn't much I would be able to do about it anyway without a battle rifle. I just had my AR with me, which was for light stuff. I had to push any of those big possibilities out of my mind. People used to get hung up on assault rifle versus battle rifle or whatnot. AR was actually the acronym of a manufacturer, not the acronym for assault rifle. Then assault rifle started getting abused by the media to mean military style, whatever that meant. The military actually took a different rifle to war, but the media, being as stupid as it was, didn't care. Despite the media's lies, would just slightly modify their words over and over again until they felt like it wasn't a lie anymore. If they ever got narrowed down, they could simply cut the segment short or cut the person off, never having to take responsibility for their errors and keep on propagating false information. So, when I talk about my AR, it's really respecting the original platform before they stopped selling to the public at all. We used to do the same thing with computers. PC or personal computers were originally patterned off a specific manufacturer, and you never heard anyone freak out about that, but for some reason, when it comes to firearms, everyone had to get extremely ridiculous about it. Eventually, we didn't mind calling our 5.56x45 for ARs or 7.62x39 for AKs assault rifles because we actually had trained with them, gone to war with them, and all sorts of things in between. It had just been frustrating to label a brand new tool that had done nothing yet, such prejudiced and evil-sounding names. Like, how do you know it's going to be an assault rifle? Maybe it's going to be a home defense rifle or a target rifle or a hunting rifle. People should be able to call their rifle whatever they want, not have someone else just wholesale label all rifles something. We usually ended up calling a brand new blank rifle a modern long rifle, if it wasn't specifically patterned off anything familiar. But when we would talk about battle rifles, we'd be talking about the higher calibers such as 7.62x51 and the accompanying boutique rounds. While those battle rifles can't carry as much ammo, they are generally considered designated marksmen. Notice I didn't say sniper, which was another dirty word that everyone liked to throw around. These were snipers, but most people with a well-tuned precision rifle weren't snipers.